Hello, everyone. We want to welcome you to this new podcast we are doing. We are calling it the Brevard Christian Church Podcast, and that name might confuse people because it does not exist as a legal entity, but it's our belief that in God's mind, it does exist. The Christians here in Brevard County, some of them have gotten together, and I am Seth Bourne and my father Mark Bourne work together at a specific location called MI Church, and we also have Mike Hall with us from Discovery Christian Church, and we together as Christians in Brevard are doing a joint podcast. We hope that you all enjoy it. My name is Seth Bourne. I'm joined by my father over here.
Hey.
Mark Bourne
Yep.
over there. So I will probably just refer to him as Dad because it's a long-standing habit. So I hope you guys will forgive me for that. But across from him, we have this very sharp-looking guy, young preacher by the name of, go ahead, man.
Yeah, my name's Mike. I will not be calling Mark Dad today.
Mike Hall.
Hey, is Pops
Hall.
okay? Does that one work?
Well, okay. It's forgivable. All right. Sorry this is degrading so fast. I have here a sand timer in front of me. This is a 30-minute sand timer, and this, we'll call it the Sands of Time for our first episode, I guess. I'm going to flip that right now. This is going to tell us when it's time to wrap up each episode. But this first one, I guess we'll just jump right in. This is our Foundations 101, like the basics. What kind of church you getting yourself into podcast. And so that's where we begin. I believe we begin with this basic question of what does God want his church to be? And so on the area of foundations and on the area of answering that question, Dad, would you like to comment? How would you introduce a topic like this one?
Wow, it's that's a great question. I love that question. I think it's a question people need to answer. Problem is, you can approach it from a whole bunch of different ways. So let me start by approaching it one way, and then you guys give me feedback. And if we need to go another direction, I'll be happy to do that. Years ago, I had the privilege of preaching at a church in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, and a wonderful group of people there. But one of the highlights for me was working with an associate minister by the name of Jeff. And think the world of Jeff. I've haven't been as close with him in recent years, but every time I get in touch with him, the guy is just a sharp guy. He's very perceptive.
I remember him as a kid.
Yeah. He's one of these guys who has a real talent of just kind of weeding through all the peripheral stuff and just cutting to the chase, getting at the heart of the matter. And that's kind of important background for this story because one of our calls, years after I had moved to Florida, I was serving another church. I was talking with Jeff on the phone, seeing how things were going, and I was trying to catch up with some of the people that were in the church and good reports and stuff like that. But he brought up a name of a couple. I didn't even know these people. And he was kind of glad that I didn't know them. And he said, good, because I want to tell you a story. He said they started coming to the church 2-3 years ago. And he said just recently they stopped. And so he went and did the follow-up call. He sat down with them, I don't know, had a cup of coffee, just was talking about some stuff. And he said, Mark, and I'm sure this was, I don't know, our conversation or whatever, but again, Jeff's real good at cutting to the chase. He said, Mark, the conversation, it came down to this. They didn't agree with what our church teaches about baptism and communion.
Oh boy.
Baptism and communion.
If you had a nickel for
and that doesn't surprise me. I mean, the Christian church takes a strong stand because I hope people will hear us out and let us go through the scripture and understand why we take a strong stand. But nonetheless, Jeff's perceptive comment to them, as soon as they said that, Jeff said, he turned to him and said, you mean it took you 2 years to figure out what we teach about baptism and communion? Yeah. And the people had to, he said that, it was silent pause. And they looked at him and kind of shook their head. Well, yeah, I guess so. And so Jeff was lamenting the fact that, maybe we're not teaching this as clear as we ought to. Yeah. And I understand that. Sometimes you can't cover the same basics every single week. But a series like this, what does God want his church to be? We're not going to, I hope we get into everything that's pertinent, but we want to give most of our attention to the big ones, right? The big stones come first. So that's kind of where I would start with this.
Gotcha.
I don't know what you guys had in mind, but I just want to, that's why we don't just call it 101, we call it Foundations.
Right.
Kind of the big ideas here.
So I got a question though. When you were coming up with this, right? So like, how did you know where you wanted to start?
Thank you. That gives me an opportunity too, because I often feel bad using other people's material, and it's developed and changed through the years. But
I don't feel bad.
I'm about to say, you told me that sermons were made for stealing. Wait a minute.
Preachers are the best thieves I know.
You know, we just got back from this conference where Cam Huxford, which, by the way,
Come on,
I think
y'all.
it's really important to drop a lot of names during this podcast, because if people are going to look up names, maybe they'll...
That was my favorite quote from the thing. Jesus to the rescue, y'all. Cam Huxford.
Cam Huxford. Somebody on stage was complimenting him and thanking him for a message.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'll thank the guy I took it from.
Yeah.
One of those kind of things. And good material is shared. But this first lesson in particular started from a series that Bob Russell developed while he was still the minister at Southeast Christian Church years ago. And it was the series, What We Believe series.
Yeah.
And this this first lesson, it was really his second lesson in his series. And it's just kind of the historical background. And I've tried to keep some of the major scriptures and some of the major points that he covered, but I kind of use that as the backdrop or the main outline for this first lesson. So if somebody wants to look up some wonderful resources, go to Bob Russell's What We Believe. It's some of the older material back when he was there, and it's a great place to start. But I've got a question for you guys. You guys are going to fire a lot of questions at me.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's my question for you. When we ask this question, what does God want his church to be? What do you think most people think when they hear the word church?
Man, they think of the building, but that's the first thing. First of all, they think of the building and where people go on Sunday, in my experience. You say church, that's all they're thinking. They're not thinking of... Mostly they're thinking of the building. On a rare occasion, they say, well, it's not the building, it's the people. But even then, it's almost like just they have kind of some tertiary or, tangential
I tend to think
understanding.
like some sort of incorporation or institution, like
a not-for-profit.
So the church is located where? Well, it's on this street at this location. I can call it. I can send a mail to it.
Right. Or sometimes the Baptist church or the Presbyterian.
Or
Categories
things like that.
of churches.
Right.
In a lump sum. Yeah, those sorts of things for sure.
Well, going back to this conference we just attended, one of the guys on stage, my favorite guy, by the way, his name's Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Guy with the real long goatee.
Hey, man, he got back with me, actually. He said, somebody say, hey, send me an email. We'll get together. And I was like, all right, let's see. Send him one. He actually sent it back.
Yeah, so I got to tell on Mike here. We're at this wonderful conference, and we're talking about godly theological things. And a lot of us are commenting how we really like Matt. And Mike says, yeah, I went up and talked to him right afterwards. And what did you say to him, Mike? You said, how long did it take you to grow that goatee?
Yeah, that was what I was concerned about. No, because he had that long. I was like, all right. Hey, man, I said, thank you for what you said, brother. Also, how long did that take you? He said he'd been growing it since he's 18.
The foundational important issues.
Okay, I bring this up for a reason, though. Do you remember the name of the congregation, the church that he serves? What's the name of his church?
Ekklesia, right?
Yeah, and what did he say? He said if they had a chance to name it again, they'd never name it Ekklesia. Because, what was
Nobody can pronounce it. Or he said it's Ekklesia, like Hispanic or something.
He said they got to speak in tongues just to say the name of the church.
Okay, why in the world would a Christian minister want to call their group Ekklesia? Why would they want to do that? Seriously.
Yeah, well, we know why. It's because he pulled it out of the scriptural word, the Greek word that means church, right?
Right. And I don't mean to gross out our listeners, but I've always liked the breakdown Greek words, and the preposition ek literally means out from, and it sounds like you're ecking when you say ek, doesn't it? It sounds like. Yeah. In fact, for the few people who might be watching this online, I do know the sign for throwing up in sign language.
Oh, yeah?
And it kind of goes with the ek.
You throw your hands in front of you.
Okay.
That's a pleasant picture. Let's remember this. All right.
Okay, let's break that word down. Ekklesia literally means the preposition out from, but it means the called ones. So called out from. And if you don't mind me telling a quick historical story about this. It's rich to me, and again, you might catch me on a few of these details because I'm not real big on Roman history, but I love what I've read. And one of the most famous emperors of ancient Rome would be Julius Caesar. And most people are familiar, especially with, they know how he died. Right? Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize he died childless. And since he had no heir to the throne, knowing that early on, he saw a young Octavius that at a very young age he adopted and chose to follow him to be the next emperor of Rome. The problem was when the Iutu Brutus, Ectu Brute, that when he was assassinated, Octavius was so young that he was challenged for the throne, and that's where Mark Antony and all that other stuff comes into play, because there were several people vying for the throne. Yeah. And Octavius, through many conquests on the battlefield and in other ways proving himself, eventually came to the throne. And the reason that background is important is Caesar worship involved calling Caesar God. But Octavius, when he took the throne, by the way, he took the throne name Caesar Augustus, which those of us who've read the Gospel of Luke, which I hear some people really like.
Where's that at?
Yeah. When he takes the throne name, Caesar Augustus, he was, according to Roman historians, not only worshipped as God, but he was worshipped as the Son of God, because he was adopted by Julius Caesar. So the Son of God, one of the most important events on the calendar as far as Augustus was concerned, was his birthday. So he would send out messengers. Messengers, in the Greek, you would either call them evangelists or evangels, ones who carry a message of good news, which the good news would be the gospel. So you have evangelists bringing the gospel, the good news, and the message is that we're going to celebrate the birth of the Son of God. Now, isn't that neat, that Roman background and how that ties in? Because when the New Testament was written, it was written in the Greek language, but Rome was in control of the world at that time. This is during the Roman Empire. So many of these words that mean a lot to us as Christians had a rich Roman background to them. Okay, all this is just background to talk about the Ekklesia, because if an evangel or evangelist were to come to a community with some other message, good news would be gospel, but whatever message they had, if they had a message and they said they were going to have an assembly or a meeting, if they came to a community, let's say, and said that there's going to be an important announcement made, and everyone who wants to hear this announcement come outside the city at sunset and gather by the old oak tree. I don't even know if they have oak trees over there. But we're just making this up as we go. Yeah. Okay, so let's say meet at the old oak tree at sundown. Everybody from, let's say it's a community of 5,000 people, let's say 500 people were interested to the point that they came out of the city and met at the old oak tree. The term they would use is the Ekklesia. Here's the Ekklesia. Because they were called out, but the word in itself, it's not just being called out. Inherent in the meaning of the word was people who are called out to meet together. So it inherent in the word is the idea of an assembly, but it's an assembly is called. That's why I love that illustration, because there is a sense in which we are called out from, but we're not just called out from. We're called out from in order that we might assemble together with others who are called out from. That's kind of the background. But the question we have to ask is, what are we called out from?
Yeah. So just so I understand here, there's a. It's not just a mass exodus like, oh yeah, we're going out of town, but it's going to the old oak tree. Whoever decided to go to the old oak tree, that would be an ekklesia, or that would be church.
Yes.
The word for church is a group of people called out from one place, specifically called together for a purpose or for a... Am I understanding this right?
Definitely so. But one of the things that comes to the forefront of my mind is, how do you battle against people who want to take this to, let's all go live in a community, a commune somewhere, or let's build a monastery. Let's get out from the world and let's go be by ourselves.
Yeah. How far out is called out?
Okay.
So what are we called out from, I guess?
Okay, what are we called out from? That's a good question. How about we go at it from this angle? As a group of God's followers, we are the church, the Ekklesia, the called out ones. But individually, you made reference to this in your sermon this morning.
I did?
Yeah, you did. You made reference to the fact that we are supposed to be... Yeah. Individually, we are called to be different. But the biblical word for being different is
holiness.
Holy. Being holy. There's a strong parallel between individual holiness and group churchness.
Yeah.
Because we're called apart, called to be different.
Man, I remember this when you said this before too. Like because I get this sometimes when people say like, well, it's a group thing, but then there's a real, it's like a dichotomy. Like it has to be both. And I think you said it was like if we're both going to that doorway.
Yes.
Right. So whether I'm just focused on myself and I meet you there, or whether our whole goal is to get there or whatever, at some point you're going to get closer together. You're going to be, you know what I mean? So
that was, both headed to the same point, then you're going to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that. I love that illustration because if you start alone and you end alone, then you got a problem.
Yeah, you might not.
If you didn't meet other people along the way,
you might have got the wrong call to the wrong place.
Well, that's the wrong church.
Yeah. All right. Okay. The called out ones. We are called out from. I'll just throw the word out here. Let's say we're called out from the world again, because the scripture you read this morning in 1 John chapter 2, we're not to love the world nor the things of the world. Okay. How many different ways is the word world used? We have to put this in biblical context.
Because
right?
God so loved the world. So
yeah.
Wait a minute.
Why are we not supposed to love the world if for God so loved the world? Everyone knows that verse.
Okay, give me a working definition then. What are we talking about? We talk about, instead of John 3:16, for God so loved the world, let's focus on being called apart from the world. What do we mean by that? What kind of world are we talking about?
Like a flesh and blood? Like just your... what you want to do?
Okay, I'm glad you said it that way, what you want to do, because the first part, hopefully we'll have time to get to this later. I think there's been I know throughout church history, there's been some false theologies, false teaching based on this idea that we're not supposed to be of the world, and they went that direction too far. They said anything that's flesh. And so that led to, in the Dark Ages, different time throughout church history, some people have taught asceticism, the kind of your body is bad, therefore you should lie in a bed of nails or whip yourself before you go to bed.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. So
Okay. But can I make this more?
Yeah.
Here's where it hits us today.
All right. Well, yeah.
Here's where it hits us today. There are some people who think the body is evil, and I am not my body. Really, I'm a woman in a man's body, or I'm a man in a woman's body. That's not me. My body. It's evil. There's something bad about the body itself, and that, whether they realize it or not, that has direct lines back to teachings that go. In fact, that predates New Testament times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it was really developed in Gnosticism, and it's a dualism that says anything that's flesh is bad. So let's refocus.
Sorry, man,
Mark.
I got you.
I got to refocus.
Like,
okay, no, that's good. Because if we are called apart from the world, it's not just my spirit, my body has to come with me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so how do I?
So
let's get back to
if we're talking about the world, I guess I've always kind of thought the world of sin, whatever that means, is that what he's talking about when he says, don't love the world or anything in the world? Like
because he goes right on. What does he say? He says, because the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of boastful pride of life. And I often think of the prince of this world. So anything that is in the classical sense secular, that which leaves God out of the picture. That kind of I don't know if there's more ways we can say that, but
so we're called out from that attitude or that viewpoint.
Attitude, viewpoint. Yeah.
Toward.
Yeah, we're called apart from the world. We're called to God. That's what we're called to be. And on an individual basis, if I'm called apart from the world to be closer to God, that means I'm trying to be holy because
Right.
he's holy. But when I do it with other people, hopefully I'm meeting other people on the way.
Yeah.
Then I'm part of the
I know it's
church.
a narrow path, but it should be at least one more person on this.
If I could interject right here, I really love, because I've been through this in lecture form before, and I really love some of the visual aids you've used over the 100 plus years you've been teaching this,
Yeah.
or however long it's been,
Yeah.
But I remember with this one, you always would go to the board and you draw two circles, two big circles, and you'd have one circle, and inside that circle you'd write a W, or you'd write the word world. This W represents the world. And then to the right of that, you draw a completely different circle, and then you'd write a big G for God. And then you talk about, there's a difference, but then you'd start drawing arrows from the world going toward the direction of God, and you draw several of them. And I just remember there were some unique things that helped me there, because these arrows there are many of them.
Yes.
They're at different lengths. Some
Yes.
have gotten closer and
Yes.
some not so much. And then you would also emphasize, by the way, there are other arrows. Then you draw some that are pointed a completely different direction.
Yeah,
because
some people are not like the world, but they're just
they're
crazy.
just their own people.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
Right,
a good
like
little
anything.
illustration in my
Yeah.
mind. That,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to mind too. One of the stories early on I used to use that maybe belaboring the point, but I think it's worth taking some time here. If I had some money set aside, because somebody told me that there was a big sale at the boot store, and if you know me, you know I like boots. Most comfortable thing ever made for the foot, right? So let's say that there's some
Says he.
some really comfortable boots, and let's say they're like, 75% off. And so I go to the boot store, and let's say there used to be this thing called a mall. A lot of people probably don't know what a mall is anymore, but there used to be these places they call malls. And malls are groups of 20 different shoe stores and a few other stores thrown in together. I'm sorry, I'm really getting off track here.
Like Amazon?
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, well.
Anyway, let's say that the boots are on sale at the mall. I go to the mall, I look at my watch, and realize I've got another appointment. I don't have enough time.
I look at my phone, but same idea.
Sorry, yeah.
That's all right.
I don't have enough time, right? I got this money. Let's say I've got $100 in my pocket, which I don't, but let's say I did, and I was going to buy as many boots as I could because it's super sale.
Right.
But I know myself, and I know that I don't have. It's going to be 3 days before I get back here. I'm going to spend that money. I don't want to spend that money.
Right.
I got that money set aside.
Yeah.
So I take it out of my pocket, and I put it on the bench that's right in front of the store. And I just set it there, and I say to myself, okay, I'm not going to spend the money. I'm just going to leave it here on the bench. And it's Sunday afternoon. On Wednesday morning, I've got some time. I'll come back, and I'll pick my money up, and I'll go in, and I'll buy some boots.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's excessively silly story, but I do it to make a point. I always ask my class, does anybody think that money will still be there, on Wednesday? And of course not. And
Not even in the Midwest, you don't think?
Highly unlikely.
Maybe
highly
anyway.
unlikely. Well, the story gets convoluted in a minute, but the point I try to make at this point of the story is that's the kind of world we live in. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
You may not think it's quote unquote satanic, even though it is, but you may not think it is. But why do you lock your doors at night? Is your car locked out in the parking lot right now? Why? Because we live in that kind of world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so people at one level understand that. Then I try to go one step further and say, let's say that you found a Bible study of the most committed, godly people on the planet, right? And you had an opportunity to go to that Bible study, and they were going to take up an offering for a mission that is just, wow, you want to support this mission. You got $100 with you. But offering time has already passed, and they're doing other things, and you say to yourself, wow, I don't want to spend this money on anything else. I want to give it to the mission. So you pull your money out of the pocket, and you set it down on the chair. And this is where I have to pause and say, this chair is in a room that only the most godly people on the planet ever enter, right? And then I say, now next week, do you think that money would be sitting on the chair? And every class I've ever taught, nobody thinks it's going to be there. And I think, wait a minute, how have I not told this story right? I think
it'll be in the lost and found.
Okay, either in lost found, or somebody's going to put a note saying, whoever left their money here, I picked it up for you, or whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is the super godly people are not going to steal your money, right? And it's hard for us to, maybe this is testament to the fact that it's so hard for us to stretch our minds to that kind of an existence, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that's the point. If everything were perfect, we wouldn't have to lock our cars, we wouldn't have to do so many things, but we don't live in that kind of world. So very broad, very general. We want to be less like the world that has gone away from God. We want to get back to God with other people who want to get back to God. What does that mean? Okay. I am not saying this is a great definition of church. I am saying this is a working definition of church that we can at least start our study with. Later on, we'll go more in depth on the topic of the church.
Gotcha. So
good enough?
Our timer is winding down, and so this gives me a quick chance to recap before I flip it.
Cool.
And we move on. So we've spoken about what the church is, and in summary, it is the called out ones, called out for a purpose of being less worldly, less like the world of sin, or however you want to say that, and more like God, the true God of the Bible. Now, where we're headed,
or can we say more like God would have us be?
More like God would have us be. Okay. Right. And I just want to emphasize to people that we haven't even touched a lot of the scripture yet, but that is where we're headed. We're heading into some scripture that's going to really point to all this more specifically. So hang on for that. Thank you for being with us now. Just so you know, we'll wind down this lesson, this discussion for sure, but we'll pick it up again with more on the church and exactly what that is and what it is supposed to be, whether or not what it is. Is that right? That's
and if this lesson brings up any questions or you have any comments, send them to Mike Hall.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.